Shabbat shalom. So I thought we could do a little bit of a text study today. We've spent a lot of time listening over the past several days. I thought it might be nice to do a little bit of learning together. And I chose a text that at first glance, you might be a little curious. Why are we going to be reading a text about the Akedah, the binding of Isaac today? We didn't read that in the Torah this morning. But I chose it for three reasons. First of all, we're currently in between the two times in the year that we read the binding of Isaac. We read it a week ago, or more than a week ago on Rosh Hashanah, 2 weeks, and we're about to read it in a few weeks. Believe it or not, Simchat Torah is coming. We're about to restart the Torah, and it's pretty soon towards the beginning of Breshit. The second reason I chose this text is that, in fact, we invoke our ancestors on Sukkot. Tomorrow night, many of us, at some point in our Sukkot dinner celebrations, are going to actually welcome Abraham and Sarah as guests into our sukkah and invoke their presence. And the third reason is that this particular text about the Akedah is found in a collection of midrash that I am going to be teaching as part of a 3-part series in November. And so I wanted to whet people's appetite for learning from this particular compilation of midrash. And I will say more later about what that compilation of midrash is. But let's start a little bit by talking about the Akedah. There's a character who's missing from the story of the Akedah as we read it 2 weeks ago in Shul. Who is the character who's glaringly absent from this story where Abraham almost sacrifices Isaac on a mountain? Who's missing? Sarah. So there have been many midrashim written to try and answer the question, where was Sarah? Some of them were written by the rabbis, right? 1,500 years ago. Some of them have been written in modern times. We've had all sorts of things written about this question, where was Sarah? And so, in fact, this midrash that I'm bringing to you this morning is another of those midrashim. Now, this midrash is written in the classical style, the style that the rabbis used to write in 1,500 years ago. And so as we go through it, we may point out a few techniques of midrash. The first technique that I'm going to point out is that it's going to scatter quotes from the biblical text into the midrash. So we're going to see, as we're reading, these quotes are used, but we may think about them differently after having read this midrash, right? They're being used a little differently than they were in the biblical text. So let's get started. We're going to give this midrash a try, see what we think of it. Does anyone want to read? Any readers for us this morning? Terry's got a microphone, so she's prepared to help amplify your voice. Anyone feel like reading? Bob, fabulous.
And it came to pass after those matters.
Great. Okay. No, it's fine. I will interrupt you as you go. Thank you, Bob. So that, as we can see, is a quote. All the quotes here are both in quotations, and they're also italicized. So that quote is the quote that begins the story of the Akedah. We read it in Shul 2 weeks ago. It came to pass after these matters. And the midrash is about to ask a question about that line, which is, and what matters? What were the matters? So, there are lots of midrashim that try and answer this question. Here's one of them. What were those matters? Bob, tell us the story.
Those matters, the matters with Sarah. And God tested Sarah.
Great. Bob, you're doing a great job also of pausing. So I'm going to use those pauses and say that in the Akedah, who are we told is tested? Abraham. Okay. Who is not tested? Sarah. So the midrash says, hey, actually, the Torah left out a story. Not only was Abraham tested, right? The rabbis tell us Abraham was tested 10 times, and this one was the last one. Not only was Abraham tested, so was Sarah. Let me tell you what happened when Sarah was tested. Bob, tell us.
And the angel said to her, take your son, your only one, whom you have loved, Isaac, and take him to the land of Moriah and offer him up.
Okay, great. Now, I hope that that line is familiar to many of us. In the context that we're used to it, who is that line directed to? Abraham. Okay, so actually this midrash tells us God said that line before, and God said it first to Sarah. Okay, keep going.
And Sarah said, no, because a mother does not slaughter her child.
Okay, so that's the story. Okay, that's what happened before Abraham sacrificed Isaac. Now, this midrash isn't done, as you can see. We're only about a third of the way through the page, but I'm curious if we have any initial reactions. Yeah. Great. The reaction was, I like it, from Lou. Yes, Lou Stool. Uh-huh. Great. So Lou says this is plausible, right? It seems almost, unbelievable to think that God didn't interact with Sarah during this story. And so, yeah, you can believe it. Okay. Other reactions? Yes, Phyllis. So Phyllis says the mother couldn't sacrifice her son, but the father could. There's something that feels really sad and challenging about that. Okay, right? By contrasting Sarah's unwillingness with Abraham's willingness, then we have to ask, how do we feel about Abraham? And we're actually going to ask that. This midrash rather is going to try and address that question. Yes.
So we're probably not there yet, but this raises for me what does this say about women? Because in contrast to Abraham, who follows God, Sarah says a woman can't do this. So what is the relationship of women to God? It's not as good.
So your first reaction, Naomi, is interesting. You're saying, does this imply that women's relationship is not as good to God? I think we should ask that as we continue through the midrash. I think the author of this midrash may have actually felt that women's relationship was better. So we're going to ask that question as we move through this midrash. Fabulous. Yes, Judith.
I think that there is a rebuke for who's doing the asking. You think a mother would kill her child? Why are you asking me this?
Great. So Naomi and Judith have both brought up some serious questions here, right? The first is, what is the relationship between God and women versus God and men? And then you're saying, well, someone's being rebuked here. Definitely someone is being rebuked here. You're suggesting it might be God. How could you think to ask such a question? And I think there's also another implied rebuke here, right? That Phyllis brought up, a rebuke against Abraham, right? So actually, is the rebuke against Abraham or against God, or maybe against both of them? Okay, we've got some more hands. Great, Rabbi.
I think it shows that Sarah has a lot of cuts. Say no to God. Abraham did not.
Great. So David Strebnick is suggesting that Sarah was more courageous than Abraham. So you're seeing this as not saying that Abraham's relationship was worse, but that Sarah had more courage. Maylee.
So what just popped into my head was contrasting this request of God for a sacrifice with God's reaction to Miriam singing when we crossed the Sea of Reeds. He said, what, my people have been killed and you're rejoicing?
Well, that actually, well, the midrash you're talking about is a little different, but great. That was one initial thought. Okay. I'll point that Moses was the one who actually initially led the children of Israel in singing. So we shouldn't think it's just about a woman's voice. Yeah, Wendy.
Let's talk. Okay.
No, I don't think, or I would say, in addition to Sarah, or not, Sarah isn't better than Abraham. I think that it's showing that women are more moral, because Abraham just, whatever you tell me, I'll do it. No problem. And Sarah actually listens to what he is asking her to do, processes it, and then says, a mother does not slaughter the child.
Okay.
And so I think it's morality, not just good or bad.
Okay. Although I think we would typically say that morality maybe has some value there. I want to also point out that this midrash leads us down that slope of gender essentializing, right? Which might be something that we might see as a little bit risky, right? We don't necessarily want to say that, women behave in this way, men behave in this way. This midrash seems to be playing with that, maybe going in that direction, because Sarah doesn't just say no, she says it in this general way, right? Because a mother does not slaughter her child. So maybe we feel comfortable with gender essentializing, maybe we don't. We're going to take one more comment, and then we're going to actually read the rest of the midrash. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that according to this midrash, Abraham has not yet been approached. So there's no way that Sarah could know that Abraham was going to say yes.
Great. But we reading it, we know that Abraham was going to say yes, right? So while Sarah might not be necessarily casting aspersions on Abraham, maybe we reading it do. Maybe.
Well, we do anyway.
All right, let's read the rest of it. Let's go back to Bob. We are in the middle of the first paragraph and early in the morning.
And early in the morning, Sarah awoke, stunned to see that neither Isaac nor Abraham was there. She lifted her arms to God in heaven and said, Master of the universe, I know that one who slaughters his son in the name of God will in the end be left without a son or God. Forgive Abraham, who was mistaken about this. Please remember that it did not occur to a mother to offer her son up to God and save the boy from him.
Okay, I think we need a minute to process that. Do we have some reactions to that? Yeah, Charles.
Well, I have a take on this. I don't believe Abraham was mistaken. I believe he was following God, learning from the promises. In your seed you will have a name, and your children will be as the sand, dust of the earth. And he proceeds onward with this, expecting to be stopped.
Okay, so Charles is quoting another midrash, or maybe his own midrash. You don't think Abraham thought he was going to go ahead with it. So you're going in a different direction from this midrash, which is fine. Part of the beauty of midrash is that midrashim do not think that they have to be the only answer. In fact, one of the big characteristics of midrash is that they're totally comfortable contradicting each other, and it's not a problem. They don't actually need to be consistent because each one is offering some sort of possible insight or idea. So that's a different read. Great. Beth.
I don't think it's any surprise that Sarah said no, because she's already shown us that she speaks back to God and does whatever she can do to protect herself and her son. She banished Hagar. Didn't she laugh at the angel who said she would bear a child?
She did.
So she's already shown us that this is her personality.
Great. Sarah is a strong woman who stands up for herself and her family.
Must be a friend of mine.
Okay, great. Joelle.
So if I got a call in the middle of the night to go kill my son, the first thing I do is wake up my husband, say, do you know what God just asked me to do? Isn't that the most stupid thing? I mean, she just goes back to sleep and lets him take off. I don't understand.
Great. So there's actually a question here, I think, about the relationship between Sarah and Abraham, right? It sounds like in some ways they're living these parallel lives. How did she not wake him up? Okay, great. So maybe you could do a midrash on the midrash, Joelle. Okay. We're going to read on because we actually don't have a ton of time. The class that I'm teaching on this compilation is going to have a lot longer than 10 to 15 minutes to really unpack these things. So let's keep going.
At that moment, Abraham stretched out his hand to the knife to slay his son. And the angel of God called out to him and said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy and do not do anything to him. For now I know that you are God-fearing, even though you did not withhold your son."
Great. So one moment, it quoted a biblical verse and then it added some key words to the end of this biblical verse. What did this midrash just do? Right. It totally turned it around, right? God says, now I know that you are God-fearing. When God says that, we assume that means, oh, what you did shows me that you are God-fearing. But this midrash totally flipped it around. And it says, despite what you did, I know that you are God-fearing. There's something else that this midrash does with the timing, right? We just, our camera just moved from Sarah to Abraham. And so in fact, what is the reason that we are led to believe by this midrash that God told Abraham not to kill Isaac? Right. It's Sarah. It's because Sarah asked God, begged God to stop this. So this midrash is a totally different view on what we may think of as the traditional read of the text, where the Akedah is Abraham's proof of his loyalty, and God stops him at the last minute because he's already proven his loyalty. There's no need to kill Isaac. So this is a total reversal of that biblical text. And I want to say that the midrashim, rabbinic midrashim, sometimes do this, right? They will take liberties with the text. They will really play with them, turn them around to really explore and see what facets the text has to offer. So this is, I would say, not atypical of a traditional rabbinic midrash. Let's finish up.
And this is why it was said, "Whatever Sarah tells you, heed her voice." And as a result, for in Isaac your seed will have a name.
Great. So those two quotes were both also in our Torah reading on Rosh Hashanah. The first one was actually on the first day of Rosh Hashanah in a totally different context. But Midrash does that. It will cut and paste from different parts of the text. They say, why does God say to listen to Sarah? Because Sarah proves herself as putting her love for her son above what she sees as what she believes God is asking of her. That is why why Abraham is supposed to listen to Sarah. And that is why, for in Isaac, your seed will have a name, right? How is Isaac supposed to perpetuate Abraham's name if he's not alive, right? It's being attributed to Sarah. Okay. This midrash, thank you. So this midrash, I think is a really beautiful read of the Akedah. It offers an alternative perspective. And it also, and it also, as I've pointed out, really has a lot of the characteristics of traditional rabbinic midrash. However, unlike traditional rabbinic midrash, which was written about 1500 years ago, this was written just several years ago, and is contained in a collection of midrashim by Israeli women called Dirshuni. And Dirshuni just came out in English translation. And so I am going to be teaching some midrashim from this collection as a 3-part series. If you look on the back of your text sheet below the questions, there's some more information about the class. It's going to be a 6:15 to 7:30 class that will include dinner on Wednesday nights. And I hope you'll join me. So just a little plug for that class. And I'd like to wrap up with some thoughts. First, I'd like to quote Tamar Biala, who is the editor of this compilation. The midrash, by the way, was written by Rivka Lubitch, who writes just some beautiful and insightful midrashim. And the editor, Tamar Biala, has this beautiful commentary She wrote introductions to every midrash, and she wrote commentary afterwards that really helps explain what the author's doing. But I want to just read a quote to you that I put in the questions. That's on the last question on the back page. She wrote, Lubitsch's midrash incorporates women into the foundational tales of our tradition. According to the theological stance that underlies her version of the binding of Isaac, the maternal instinct and the sober, clear-eyed perspective of women are fundamental elements of Jewish existence and of religious experience more generally. Now, we can agree or disagree with this statement, but this is Rivka Lubitsch articulating her theology through this story. And so I want us to notice the way that we can all become part of this conversation. There's a conversation that's been going on in our tradition for thousands of years, and we all have the opportunity to really offer up our insights, offer up our perspectives, and to be part of this tradition, just in the way that the women who created Dirshuni have done, and in the way that we have done this morning by discussing and engaging with this midrash. So Shabbat Shalom. I hope that all of our Sukkot or our Chag tables tomorrow night will be graced with the presence and the hospitality of Abraham and Sarah, and some of this love and focus on who and what is most important that that this midrash is suggesting really emanates from Sarah. So Shabbat Shalom.